What happens when Ryan Reynolds breaks character live on air, and the laughter suddenly stops? Before we step into that moment, make sure you subscribe to Stage View right now, like this video, and drop a comment below. Because what you're about to witness isn't just another celebrity interview. It's the kind of moment that makes daytime television history. The studio lights were warm, almost blinding, reflecting off polished glass tables and the signature backdrop that millions recognize instantly. The energy inside the View that morning was electric but controlled. The kind of buzz that comes when a global superstar walks onto the set. Ryan Reynolds entered with that familiar half-grin, the one audiences have come to expect. The charming, self-aware, always-in-control performer. The man who could turn even the most uncomfortable question into a punchline. The crowd erupted in cheers. Sunny Hostin greeted him with a professional smile, poised, sharp, observant. She wasn't there for punchlines. She was there for substance. The segment began light. Jokes about fatherhood. Teasing about his wife. Playful remarks about his public persona. Ryan leaned back in his chair, relaxed, tossing out perfectly timed one-liners. The audience roared. Even Sunny smiled briefly. But then something shifted. Sunny adjusted her posture slightly, crossing her legs, her tone becoming just a shade more deliberate. "Ryan," she began, voice calm but direct, "you're known for playing the witty, self-deprecating hero. But there's been conversation lately about whether that persona shields you from deeper accountability." The air thinned. Ryan's smile didn't disappear. Not yet. But it tightened. He tilted his head. "Accountability? That sounds ominous." A ripple of nervous laughter spread across the studio. Sunny didn't laugh. "I'm asking whether humor sometimes becomes a deflection, especially when discussions turn serious." The crowd quieted. The cameras zoomed slightly closer. Even the other hosts seemed to sense the temperature drop. Ryan shifted in his chair. Inside his mind, something flickered. He was used to banter, used to playful sparring. But this tone? This wasn't set up for a joke. "Well," he replied lightly, "if I ever figure out how to avoid seriousness entirely, I'll bottle it and sell it." Scattered laughter. Sunny held steady. "But do you think it's fair," she continued, "that some critics say you hide behind irony when conversations require sincerity?" There it was. The word hide. It landed heavier than expected. Ryan's fingers tapped the table once. Twice. A small movement, almost invisible, but telling. For years, his public image had been carefully crafted. The sarcastic charmer, the self-aware celebrity who mocks fame while benefiting from it. It was safe. It was controlled. It was armor. And Sunny had just reached for the cracks in that armor. The audience leaned in. One of the co-hosts attempted to lighten the mood. "I think we all use humor, don't we?" But Sunny didn't look away from Ryan. This wasn't about everyone. It was about him. Ryan inhaled slowly. The grin returned, but it was thinner now, stretched across something tense. "I don't think I hide," he said. "I think I entertain." Sunny's eyebrow lifted slightly. "Are those the same thing?" The silence that followed was almost cinematic. A cough from somewhere in the audience. The faint hum of studio lights. Ryan blinked. For the first time since he walked onto the stage, he didn't have a joke ready. His internal monologue was racing now. Stay cool. Stay charming. Keep it light. But something about the phrasing, the implication, felt personal. He leaned forward. "I think," he said slowly, "that people project a lot onto public figures. If I make someone laugh, that's not hiding. That's connecting." Sunny nodded, but her voice sharpened by a degree. Connection is powerful, but authenticity is too. And some people wonder which version of you they're seeing. The crowd murmured. There it was again. Which version? The camera caught a subtle change in Ryan's expression. The corners of his mouth dropped. The joking tone evaporated like steam. He looked directly at Sunny. "You're seeing me," he said. No punchline. No smirk. Just eye contact. The studio felt smaller now. Tighter. Sunny didn't flinch. "Then let's talk as you." The other hosts shifted uncomfortably. This was no longer a playful segment. This was a standoff disguised as daytime conversation. Ryan exhaled through his nose. Inside, something was boiling. Not anger exactly. More like frustration. The kind that builds when someone refuses to play the script you're used to. "You want sincerity?" he said quietly. "Fine." The audience went still. When you're in this industry long enough, you realize people don't actually want the messy parts. They say they do. But the moment you give them something raw, it gets dissected, memed, weaponized. Sonny listened intently. So yeah, Ryan continued, voice lower now. Sometimes humor is protection. Because protection is necessary. The room absorbed that. The tension had evolved. This wasn't banter anymore. It was confession layered with resistance. Sonny softened, but only slightly. Protection from who? She asked. That question lingered. Ryan looked out toward the audience. Toward the cameras. Toward millions watching at home. His jaw tightened. From this, he said. From being turned into a headline for breathing wrong. The audience reacted, a mixture of applause and uncertain murmurs. Sonny folded her hands. But isn't that the cost of influence? She asked gently. Of power? The word power hung heavy. Ryan's composure flickered. Power? He repeated, almost incredulous. You think I feel powerful every time someone decides to reinterpret my personality for clicks? A few gasps scattered through the crowd. This was no longer polished PR. This was raw. Sonny maintained her composure, but her eyes sharpened. I think public figures have responsibility. And I think, Ryan shot back, sharper now, that responsibility doesn't mean surrendering your humanity. There it was. The break. The tone shift unmistakable. The audience was no longer laughing. They were witnessing. One co-host tried again to diffuse it. Maybe we're just talking about balance. But Ryan didn't look away from Sonny. You asked for sincerity, he said. This is it. The studio felt electric, like the seconds before a storm breaks. Sonny leaned back slightly, measuring him. Then let me ask you this, she said. If humor is armor, what happens when it cracks? Ryan's eyes flashed. And for the first time that morning, there was no performance at all. Only silence. The kind that makes you realize you're watching something unscripted. Something real. And somewhere in that charged stillness, the audience understood. Ryan Reynolds hadn't just been challenged. He had been confronted. And whatever came next would not be a joke. The lights still blazed. The cameras kept rolling. Millions watched. But the mask, even if only for a second, had slipped. And the clash was just beginning. The silence didn't just linger, it pressed in. Ryan held Sonny's gaze, and for a split second, the studio lights felt harsher, the air heavier. The playful guest had vanished. In his place sat a man calculating every breath. Sonny didn't look triumphant. She looked steady. If humor is armor, she repeated softly, what happens when it cracks? The audience barely moved. A cough echoed somewhere in the back row. The other co-hosts exchanged careful glances, their smiles frozen in place like props that no longer fit the scene. Ryan leaned back slowly, folding his arms. A defensive posture, subtle but unmistakable. What happens? He echoed. You want the honest answer? Sonny nodded. You get this. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was controlled, but beneath it was something raw, frustration, maybe fatigue. You get a room full of people who suddenly don't know whether they're allowed to laugh anymore, he continued, gesturing lightly toward the audience. You get headlines that say Ryan Reynolds snaps because I didn't smile through a question. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some nodded. Others shifted uncomfortably. Sonny clasped her hands together on the table. Is that what you think is happening right now? She asked carefully. Ryan's jaw tightened. I think, he said slowly, that sometimes interviews become less about conversation and more about dissection. The word landed like a stone. Sonny's expression remained composed, but her eyes narrowed slightly. You feel dissected? Ryan leaned forward now, the distance between them shrinking. When you frame humor as hiding, he replied, you're not just asking about craft. You're questioning character. The tension spiked. One of the co-hosts attempted a small chuckle. We're just digging deeper, Ryan. He didn't look at her. And I'm answering deeper, he said. For a moment, the cameras cut to the audience, faces wide-eyed, some whispering. This wasn't the breezy morning television they'd signed up for. Sonny inhaled slowly. My job, she said, voice firm but not raised, is to ask questions that viewers are already asking. And my job, Ryan countered, is to decide how much of myself I'm willing to hand over. That hit harder than either of them expected. The studio felt suspended in time. Sonny tilted her head slightly. Are you saying you don't trust spaces like this? Ryan paused. There it was, the line that could define the narrative. He hesitated just long enough for the silence to grow uncomfortable. I'm saying, he began carefully, that vulnerability on television isn't the same as vulnerability in real life. The audience exhaled collectively. Sonny leaned in. Then what is it? Ryan's eyes flickered, just for a second, and something vulnerable passed across his face. It's currency, he said quietly. You trade it for relatability. And sometimes you regret the transaction. The room absorbed that. Sunny's expression softened for the first time. Regret? She asked. Ryan gave a humorless half-smile. You ever open up in an interview, he said, and then see a 10-second clip stripped of context trending online? A few audience members nodded. The reality of social media hung heavy in the air. Sunny didn't immediately respond. Instead, she studied him, not as an opponent, but as a subject. So when people say they want authenticity, she said gently, you think they're asking for something they won't actually protect. Ryan's voice dropped lower. I think they want the illusion of it. That sentence changed everything. A wave of murmurs swept through the studio. Sunny straightened. Are you suggesting audiences are incapable of handling the truth? She asked. Ryan shook his head quickly. No, I'm saying the system isn't built to handle it. The word system hung like a charged wire. One of the co-hosts interjected carefully. But isn't this the system you thrive in? The question was sharp, unintentionally or not. Ryan's composure flickered again. Thrive, he repeated. You see box office numbers. You see press tours. You don't see the calculation behind every sentence because one wrong tone becomes a narrative. Sunny crossed her arms now, mirroring his earlier posture. Then why play the game? She asked. There it was. The question that cut to the core. Ryan stared at the table for a moment. The glossy surface reflected the studio lights, fractured and bright. Because I love storytelling, he said finally. I love making people laugh. I love creating. But that doesn't mean I love being reduced to a personality trait. The audience applauded lightly, hesitant at first, then stronger. Sunny let the applause settle before speaking again. No one here is reducing you, she said. We're exploring the tension between persona and person. And what if I don't want that tension explored publicly? Ryan shot back. The room tightened again. Sunny's tone hardened slightly. Public life invites public exploration. Ryan's eyes flashed. And public exploration sometimes forgets there's a human being sitting in the chair. The clash was no longer subtle. It was direct. The energy in the studio shifted from curiosity to confrontation. Sunny leaned forward, voice steady but firmer now. Ryan, with respect, you've built an empire partly on self-awareness. On meta-commentary about fame. So when someone asks you to go one layer deeper, why does that feel like an attack? The question cut clean. Ryan's lips parted, then pressed together. Inside, something was unraveling. The practiced rhythm of press junkets, the rehearsed wit, the effortless deflection. None of it fit this moment. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. It feels like an attack, he said, voice tighter now, when it assumes I'm performing insincerity. The audience reacted audibly, a mix of oohs and low murmurs. Sunny didn't back down. Are you? The word dropped like a gavel. Ryan froze. For years, he had controlled the frame. He dictated tone with a single raised eyebrow, redirected tension with a joke. But now he was being cornered by a question that couldn't be laughed away. He looked directly into the camera for the first time since the tension began, as if aware of the millions watching. Do you think I'm fake? He asked Sunny. It wasn't sarcastic. It wasn't playful. It was personal. Sunny met his gaze. I think everyone has layers, she replied carefully. I'm asking which one we're meeting today. The audience gasped softly. Ryan's composure cracked, not explosively, but visibly. His shoulders dropped. The defensive posture dissolved. You're meeting the tired one, he admitted. The room shifted again. Tired. Not angry. Not defensive. Tired. Sunny blinked, just once, surprised by the vulnerability. Tired of what? She asked quietly. Ryan's voice lowered to almost a confession. Tired of being reduced to headlines. Tired of every serious answer being labeled out of character. As if I'm only allowed to exist in one tone. The audience applauded again, this time stronger, more supportive. Sunny nodded slowly. That's fair, she acknowledged. But you have to understand something too. Ryan waited. When you cultivate a persona built on irony, she said, people begin to wonder what's underneath. Curiosity isn't cruelty. Ryan held her gaze. No, he said softly. But sometimes it feels like interrogation. The word hung heavy. The other hosts shifted again, sensing the moment had reached a tipping point. Sunny's expression changed, not defensive, not confrontational. Reflective. If this feels like interrogation, she said, that was never the intention. Ryan studied her face, searching for insincerity. Finding none. The tension didn't vanish. But it evolved. The clash had reached its peak. Not with shouting, not with insults, but with something more dangerous, honesty. The audience sat in stunned silence. The cameras rolled. And for the first time that morning, the question wasn't whether Ryan Reynolds had broken character. It was whether he had finally stopped playing one. And the conversation was far from over. The studio didn't return to normal. It couldn't. Something had shifted too deeply. Ryan sat there, shoulders no longer squared for defense, but not fully relaxed either. The air between him and Sunny felt charged, not hostile but exposed. Like two people who had stepped into deeper water than they intended. Sunny broke the silence first. "I don't want this to feel like interrogation," she said carefully. "But I also don't want to pretend we're not discussing something real." Ryan nodded once. Slow. Measured. "I respect that," he replied. "I do." But there was still tension in his voice, a thread pulled too tight. One of the co-hosts leaned in gently. "Maybe what we're circling around is this idea of control. Ryan, you've always seemed in control of your narrative. Today feels different." Different. The word echoed. Ryan gave a faint, almost amused exhale. Different is one way to put it. The audience chuckled softly, the first sign of lightness trying to re-enter the room. Sunny watched him closely. "Do you feel out of control right now?" Ryan didn't answer immediately. His mind was racing. Years of press tours. Carefully calculated charm. The wink, the sarcasm, the deflection. The armor. And here he was in a daytime studio, feeling something dangerously close to being cornered. Not by cruelty, but by sincerity. "I feel," he said slowly, misunderstood. That landed differently. Not defensive. Not combative. Human. Sunny's posture softened. Misunderstood how? Ryan leaned forward, elbows on the table now. No longer leaning back in protection. "People assume the humor is a mask," he said. "But what if it's just me?" The audience grew still again. "What if I'm not hiding depth?" he continued. "What if I just choose to express it differently?" Sunny considered that. "But when you avoid certain topics with humor," she replied gently, "it can look like avoidance." Ryan nodded. "Or it can be boundary." There it was. A line drawn, but calmly. Sunny tilted her head. "Are we crossing one right now?" The question was almost tender. Ryan's eyes flickered, searching himself before answering. "No," he admitted. But it felt close. The honesty was disarming. A hush swept through the audience. One of the co-hosts whispered, barely audible, "Wow." Sunny clasped her hands together. "Thank you for saying that." Ryan offered a small nod. "But here's the thing," he added. "When you're known for being the funny guy, the second you drop the punchline, people get uncomfortable." He glanced briefly toward the audience. "And you can feel it." The crowd shifted, some nodding in reluctant agreement. Sunny didn't deny it. "Maybe we're conditioned to expect performance." "Exactly," Ryan said. "And when performance stops, it feels like malfunction." The word hung in the air. Malfunction. As if seriousness was a glitch in his programming. Sunny leaned forward again. "So when you said you're tired," she said quietly, "is it the performance that exhausts you, or the expectation?" Ryan didn't hesitate this time. The expectation. A beat. Performance is choice. Expectation is pressure. That hit hard. The audience responded with soft applause. Not loud, not explosive. Thoughtful. Sunny's expression changed again, less journalist, more human. "I think," she said slowly, "a lot of people watching might relate to that." Ryan gave a faint smile. Not the polished one. A real one. "Yeah," he murmured. "That's the irony." A subtle ripple of laughter passed through the room. He continued, voice steady now. "The guy who jokes about everything is actually trying to manage pressure. That's not manipulation. It's coping." The word coping reframed everything. Sunny nodded. "Coping with what?" Ryan inhaled deeply. "Fame," he said simply. "Scrutiny. The weirdness of having strangers decide who you are." A murmur of agreement traveled through the audience. Sunny held his gaze. "But you also benefit from that fame," she said carefully. Ryan didn't flinch this time. "Of course I do," he said. "I'm not denying that. I'm grateful for it. But gratitude doesn't cancel strain." That sentence lingered. The co-host, who had been quiet most of the segment, finally spoke up. "I think what's powerful right now," she said softly, "is that this doesn't feel like a fight anymore." The audience nodded. She continued, "It feels like two people trying to understand each other." Sunny glanced at Ryan. And for the first time since the tension began, there was the faintest hint of shared acknowledgement. Ryan gave a small, almost relieved laugh. "Trust me," he said. "This is not how I pictured this morning going." The crowd laughed lightly. "Me neither," Sonny admitted. A crack in the intensity. But it wasn't over yet. Sonny straightened slightly. "There's something I want to clarify," she said. "When I asked whether humor can be deflection, it wasn't accusation. It was curiosity." Ryan listened. "I ask tough questions because I respect the person sitting here," she added. Surface answers don't do justice to someone who's clearly capable of more. That shifted something inside him. Respect. Not exposure. Not entrapment. Respect. Ryan's shoulders eased. "I can handle tough questions," he said quietly. "I just struggle when it feels like the answer is predetermined." Sonny nodded thoughtfully. "That's fair." A pause. Then she asked, more softly than before, "Did it feel predetermined?" Ryan hesitated. "For a second," he admitted. When the word hide came up, the audience reacted subtle murmurs. Sonny absorbed that. "I can see how that word carries weight," she acknowledged. "It does," Ryan said, "because it implies shame." The studio fell silent again. Sonny's voice lowered. "That wasn't my intention." Ryan studied her face carefully. "I believe you," he said. And just like that, the confrontation dissolved into something more complex, mutual recognition. The audience exhaled collectively, as if they had been holding their breath for minutes. One of the co-hosts smiled. Well, this turned into therapy. Laughter rippled across the room. Genuine this time. Ryan chuckled too, tension finally loosening. "Do I get a copay discount?" he joked softly. The crowd laughed louder now, relief flooding the studio. But even through the laughter, something had changed permanently. Ryan leaned back again, but differently this time. Not defensive. Just present. Sonny smiled, not triumphant, not defensive, just human. "You know," she said, "this might be one of the most honest conversations we've had on this show in a long time." Ryan glanced around the studio. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It might be one of the most honest I've had in a long time." The audience applauded louder now. Not because of a punchline. Not because of a viral moment. Because of vulnerability. The cameras zoomed out slightly, capturing the whole table. The co-hosts, the guest, the charged atmosphere that had transformed into something almost reflective. But beneath the relief, everyone in that room knew something else too. This wasn't just a conversation. It was a moment. The kind that would be clipped, replayed, dissected online within hours. The kind that would spark headlines. Ryan Reynolds breaks character. Sonny Hostin presses too hard. Awkward clash or powerful dialogue. Ryan knew it. Sonny knew it. And somewhere deep down, both understood that once the cameras stopped rolling, the real storm might begin. Because vulnerability on live television doesn't end when the segment does. It echoes. And outside those studio walls, millions were already forming opinions. The aftermath was coming. And it would be louder than the silence that started it all. The applause faded, but the echo of the moment didn't. As the segment wrapped, the theme music swelled gently through the studio speakers. Smiles returned. The co-hosts shuffled their cards. A producer off camera gave the subtle rotating finger gesture that meant, wrap it up. Ryan stood, shaking hands, exchanging polite thank yous. Sonny offered a final nod, not stiff, not forced. Respectful. "Thank you for staying in it," she said quietly, just for him. Ryan met her eyes. "Thank you for not backing down." A small, mutual smile. But even as they stepped away from the table, the atmosphere remained thick. Like the air after lightning strikes, but before thunder rolls away. The audience filed out buzzing. "Did you see his face when she said hide?" He looked hurt. No, he looked defensive. That was real. Phones were already out in the hallway. Clips were being uploaded before Ryan even reached his dressing room. Inside that room, away from the cameras, he finally exhaled fully. His publicist stood near the door, tablet in hand, already scrolling. "It's trending," she said carefully. Ryan let out a soft, almost amused laugh. Of course it is. On social media, the divide formed instantly. One side applauded him. Finally, someone calling out the pressure celebrity's face. Ryan was honest. That took guts. The other side wasn't so forgiving. He couldn't handle a real question. Sonny was doing her job. Clips of the exact moment. "Are you?" Looped endlessly. Slow motion edits. Dramatic music overlays. Reaction videos popping up within the hour. Media outlets picked up the story fast. Entertainment blogs framed it as a showdown. Cable news debated whether it was a clash or a breakthrough. By evening, headlines were everywhere. Ryan Reynolds drops the act live on TV. Sonny Hostin pushes for authenticity. Awkward silence stuns audience. But something interesting happened beneath the noise. Longer clips began circulating. Not just the tense exchange, but the resolution. The mutual understanding. The acknowledgement of boundaries. And viewers who watched the full segment began commenting differently. That wasn't a fight. That was uncomfortable honesty. They both handled it better than people are saying. Back at the studio, producers reviewed footage. "It's going viral," one said. "Yeah," another replied. "But not for the reason people think. Because it wasn't explosive shouting that caught attention. It was restraint. It was a famous actor choosing not to retreat into sarcasm. It was a journalist choosing not to weaponize tension." The next morning, daytime talk shows discussed it. Radio hosts dissected it. Even late-night comedians referenced it, gently, cautiously. And then something unexpected happened. Sunny addressed it on the following episode. She sat at the same table, same lights, same set. "Yesterday's conversation sparked a lot of reactions," she began. "I want to say something clearly. Tough questions aren't meant to diminish someone. They're meant to understand them." The audience applauded. Meanwhile, Ryan posted nothing dramatic. No defensive tweet. No cryptic Instagram caption. Instead, he uploaded a simple story, a photo of a coffee mug on a table captioned, "Conversations Comfort." No explanation. No elaboration. And somehow that said everything. In interviews weeks later, he referenced the moment indirectly. "I think we need to get more comfortable being uncomfortable," he told one outlet. Not every serious question is an attack. Sometimes it's an invitation. That line spread almost as widely as the original clip. But behind the polished reflections, insiders knew something deeper had happened that day. Ryan had tested the limits of his persona and found that it could stretch without breaking. Sunny had tested the boundaries of her questioning and proved it could be firm without being cruel. And the audience? They had witnessed something rare. Not scandal. Not meltdown. Growth. The full segment eventually racked up millions of views online. Comment sections remained divided but thoughtful. Some still insisted he snapped. Others insisted she pushed too hard. But many began sharing their own stories, about using humor as armor, about feeling misread, about the exhaustion of expectations. The conversation had moved beyond celebrity. It had become human. Months later, at an industry event, Ryan and Sunny crossed paths again. No cameras. No studio lights. Just a quiet exchange in a crowded room. "I guess we survived," Sunny joked softly. Ryan smiled. "We did more than that." They didn't need to elaborate. Because both understood. The real story wasn't the tension. It was what came after. In a media landscape addicted to outrage, they had modeled something different. Engagement without explosion. Disagreement without disrespect. And for viewers who watched closely, that mattered. So what happens when Ryan Reynolds breaks character during a clash with Sunny Hostin? The world leans in. Headlines flare. Clips circulate. But beneath the noise, something quieter unfolds. A reminder that authenticity isn't about being flawless or fearless. It's about staying in the chair when it would be easier to walk away. It's about answering even when your voice feels exposed. And maybe, just maybe, it's about realizing that breaking character isn't losing control. It's reclaiming it. Now we want to hear from you. Was Ryan right to push back? Was Sunny right to press harder? Did this feel like a clash or a breakthrough? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about it. And if you want more explosive, emotional, behind-the-scenes stories that pull you inside the moments everyone else only headlines, make sure you subscribe to Stage View right now. Because the next time a smile slips, a silence stretches, or a celebrity drops the mask live on air, you'll be right here with us, watching it unfold.